Welcome. Hey, it's so great to have everyone here. Thank you for attending our joint presentation here today with Xylogix and Fortinet, and the focus is on zero trust. So if you thought you were here for, bear hunting, living in the wild, you're close, but no, zero trust is what we're here for today. I'm Mark Hand, and I'm with Xylogix. We are an IT solutions provider based here in the Northwest, although serving throughout the United States. Obviously, we work on your entire data center, from storage to security to networking and wireless, backup recovery, the full suite. You can see the list on the screen there, so I won't bore you with the details. But I am excited about today's webinar about zero trust, because we've all heard the words. We know it's hot topic, but we know it's also being blurred and being made ambiguous by so much conflicting messaging out there. Today, I have with us Peter Newton, a Senior Product Manager with Fortinet, and he's going to share with us really what we define as zero trust and what you need to focus on and how you can attack it, what the challenges are, and how you can resolve everything. So Peter is an excellent expert, good communicator. I think you'll enjoy the presentation. If you have any questions, just shoot it into the chat box. We'll answer them if time allows. But in the meantime, Peter, why don't you let it roll?
Thanks a lot, Mark, and thanks for that kind introduction. Yes, I've been with Fortinet about 4 years now, though I've been in the computer and security networking business for more than 20 years now. I came to Fortinet because I was really impressed with their firewalling technology, but what's really impressed me now that I've been here a while is how Fortinet really provides a platform approach to cybersecurity, and that integration of products together, I think, is key. So as Mark mentioned, we're going to be talking about zero trust today. I do have responsibility for our zero trust solution at Fortinet. So we'll talk about trends and the solution itself and what it takes to implement it. So with that, why don't we get going on what's causing zero trust? What is this concept? Zero trust is a term that is heavily used in the security industry today. It's really overused, and so as a result, there's a lot of confusion as to what it is and what the benefits are, what it means. As I'm sure you recognize all the trends that are on the slide right now. Nothing is a surprise for anyone, I'm sure. And these are what's driving zero trust. And it's really a reflection of the fact that our networks have evolved from a hard perimeter where what's inside is trusted and what's outside is not, to a much more fluid environment where we really need to focus on users and devices and connecting them to the resources they need. Applying zero trust principles to that construct, there's kind of three main things we want to focus on. First, with zero trust, you want to be verifying. Now you might say, well, yeah, we verify normally. What's so different about zero trust? The difference is the frequency of that verification. You want to be verifying on an ongoing basis for every transaction possible. The idea is you don't want to give untoward trust towards any user or device because should they get hacked, should they become compromised, they then become an ongoing threat vector. So with zero trust, you do trust someone once you've verified them. You do trust that device once it's been verified, but only for a limited period of time. The next thing about zero trust, basic principle, is the idea of granting minimal access. This is also sometimes associated with segmentation, and it really drives around the idea of having zones of control or small areas where when you do verify someone or something, you grant them access only to that small area, to that small amount of assets. And that's the idea behind this is sometimes called least privilege access. And it means that the user or device has the access they need to do their job, but no more. Your salespeople have access to sales information, but they don't have access to finance information. Your HVAC controller has access to the building management system. They don't have access to customer records. So this contained access is all, again, with zero trust, the idea is should you be breached, the damage done by that breach would be contained and minimal. Which leads to the final principle of zero trust is assume that you've been breached. And this pervades kind of the whole idea of zero trust is by not extending untoward trust, you can really limit the amount of damage, or you minimize your risk, such that when a breach does happen, when an identity is compromised, when a device is hacked, that it can have a very limited impact on your business. Unlike some of the ransomware attacks that you've heard where it got into the network and shut the whole company down globally, that's the type of thing we're really trying to avoid. So these are the basic principles of zero trust. Now we take a look at Fortinet. We have, as I mentioned, a platform approach to cybersecurity. Yes, we have firewalls, and we're well known for those, but it takes a whole ecosystem of security products to provide that security. I sometimes say that security is a team sport, and it definitely is in today's day and age. Within the Fortinet security fabric, we have a variety of pillars, and zero trust access is one of those pillars. That's not the end of zero trust at Fortinet, though. Zero trust access is really focusing how do you bring on users and devices and enable them to access the rest of the network, the rest of those resources. So it does rely on our adaptive cloud security and our security-driven networking to provide zero trust enforcement and some of that segmentation that I mentioned earlier. Collectively, our security fabric does provide that broad, integrated, and automated capabilities that you need for cybersecurity in today's day and age. Drilling into that zero trust access pillar, what do we need to do if we're bringing on users and devices? In a zero trust world, what we have to do here is know and control everyone and everything on and off the network. That's what zero trust requires. That's what you need to be able to do to really extend zero trust control across your network. To understand how this happens within this Fortinet security fabric, I'm going to walk through 4 use cases. I think this is kind of one of the easier ways to understand what zero trust is and what it looks like at Fortinet. So I will walk through the situations of user identity and the user associated devices. How do you control access for those? Then I'll look at those headless devices that don't have a user associated with them. Then I'll look at how do we enforce control even when someone is off the network. And finally, I want to talk about a new zero trust capability of connecting users to applications. That's the industry term for that is zero trust network access, also known as ZTNA. So I'll walk through each of these 4. So to start off with knowing who is on the network, I think this is the most common and easiest area of zero trust that people are familiar with. Zero trust is frequently thought of as not a single product or an end state, but really a philosophy and a journey of cybersecurity. So most people have some elements of zero trust in their network. And in talking about zero trust, it's really about how do we bring more zero trust into the network. And this first use case of who's on the network, I think everybody can say, yes, we have identification and authorization systems in place so that we only allow employees on the network. And that's kind of the first start. The way that you turn that into a zero trust approach is to look at those zero trust principles, doing ongoing verification and least access privilege. So that least access policy, the way that we do that within the Fortinet security fabric is with FortiAuthenticator. And so FortiAuthenticator is the common point of authentication and identity verification utilizing our 2-factor product, FortiToken, so that as users come onto the network and they self-identify, FortiAuthenticator can tie into your Active Directory, get an idea of who that user is, what their role is, and then work with the rest of the security fabric to enforce that, work with the firewalls so that your salespeople have access to sales resources and the R&D folks have access to R&D folks' access, and they're not allowed to go to the others' areas. FortiAuthenticator not only can coordinate the role-based access on the network, but it can also control access to cloud-based assets. So your SAML, through the SAML protocol, FortiAuthenticator can be your authentication against SaaS products you might be using, such as Office 365 or Salesforce.com. So your users, when they go to log into these applications, they'd use the same username and password that they use to log into the account and access internal applications and resources. For that ongoing verification, we can trigger a two-factor sign-in depending on what type of application a user is trying to authenticate against and use. So that is, again, the element of Zero Trust, of that ongoing verification. So with FortiAuthenticator and FortiToken, you have both ongoing verification and those minimal access granted as a part of that Zero Trust principles. Now, case 2, I think, is a more interesting and challenging case because these devices do not raise their hand and say, hey, I'm this person and let me help you prove that I am who I am. These are the devices that show up on the network and the IT organization has to figure out, hey, they have to discover the device and then figure out what it is. For our Zero Trust solution, we use a network access control device. Our product is Fortinet, which uses a network orchestration approach to delivering network access control. And what I mean by a network orchestration approach is that it goes and talks to the network so that it will go out and talk to all the switches, access points, firewalls, all the things that make up the network in order to do its job. In doing so, it will create a logical map of what every single port is connected to, what every single switch port has connected to it, and therefore it delivers 100% visibility of what is on the network. Because it knows what the network is, it knows everything that's connected to that network. In order to do this, Fortinet supports more than 170 different vendors and more than 2,800 different types of network devices. So all those switch models from Cisco and HP and Aruba and Ruckus and Aerohive and Mist and Juniper, all those products Fortinet can talk to and then discover what is connected to them. Once it's discovered something, we then need to identify it. We have more than 20 different means of doing that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But once we've discovered and identified something, we then need to provide that Zero Trust zone of control. And we do that through what we call micro-segmentation. So with this, using policies created, we can define slices of the network for different types of devices. So all your HVAC controllers are in one slice of the network. All your IP cameras are in another slice of the network. And Fortinet, because it can talk to all of these network devices, it can not only discover what's connected to the network, but then configure the network to maintain these slices. So it's policy-based microsegmentation, which is important because networks change. Devices move around, even wired things get unplugged and replugged into the quote-unquote wrong port. With Fortinet, there is no wrong port because Fortinet will detect that new connection, identify the device, profile it, and then reconfigure the network so that that device stays in its narrow slice of the network, stays within that small zone of control for Zero Trust. Which leads to the last point of what Fortinet does. It's that continuous response. It's the ongoing checking of the network, always watching what's going on and being able to take automated action when something should happen. Now, Fortinet is a fully capable network access control product. It handles lots of different use cases. I'm focusing on the device discovery and control because that's the role that it plays within the Zero Trust solution from Fortinet. I did mention that we have more than 20 different means of identifying devices. This is a screenshot from the device itself. And you can see we do have a lot of different mechanisms here. We have DHCP fingerprinting. We got MAC address information with the vendor OUI. We've got, it's a Windows machine. We can use WinRM or WMI to get serial number information off the device. We can look at TCP port numbers, all kinds of different things, and put together a profile to give a high confidence of any individual device. To walk through what that looks like, I have a couple of examples on the slide. A printer connects to the network. The switch is going to give an SNMP trap notification to the Fortinet saying, link up. Fortinet will then go, oh, okay, well then tell me about this device. Tell me switch, what's the MAC address of this device? And the switch can send it over, and Fortinet can go do a vendor OUI lookup and say, hey, this looks like it's from the brother corporation. This is within the range they use for their printers. Maybe this is a printer. Okay, Switch, what's the TCP port numbers being used? And Switch can let it know, and Fortinet can say, oh, okay, this is what I expect out of a printer. Fortinet might then send a HTTP request to the device, and the page that comes back, Fortinet can scrape off that page, see brothers at the top of the web page. This might match the profile and say, hey, we've got a MAC address that says it's brother, TCP port number says it's a printer, and when I send a web request page, I get a web page back that has brother at the top. This looks like a printer to me. I'm going to bring it onto the network with printer level access. Now, if an auditor should show up, take a look at that printer, spoof the MAC address, plug in their laptop, they now have an approved MAC address on an approved port. They might think that they're on the network. Not with Fortinet, because Fortinet will go through that same process. We got to link up. Okay, tell me what just connected. Okay, we got a MAC address, looks like it's brother printer. Okay, TCP port numbers. Wait, this doesn't look like a printer. Okay, send a web request. Web page comes back. I don't see brother in the top of that web page. Fortinet can then quarantine that laptop at the switch port, send an alert to the SOC team saying, hey, over in this building, on this floor, in this wiring closet, on this switch, on this port, I've got a device that's masquerading as a printer. Go check it out. So not only do you have an information-rich alert sent to the SOC team, but the auditor was prevented from getting on the network because all this happened in seconds. From their experience, they try to plug in and they're not on the network. And this is not a hypothetical example. This is actually, we've had customers come to us and say, hey, I just failed my audit. This happened. Can you guys help us pass? And yes, we can. The other example I have on this page demonstrates how Fortinet can leverage and extend the power of our platform, that security fabric that I was talking about earlier. In this example, I've got an infected laptop that's coming into the network. So an employee went for coffee, got more than a latte at Starbucks, and now they're back on the network because they're an employee. They've got a company-issued laptop. They should be on the network. Fortinet doesn't have antivirus capability. But the good news is there's other parts of the security fabric that do. And in this example, I'm using a FortiGate, but this example would equally be true if we were using our endpoint solution, our FortiClient, or our endpoint security solution, FortiEDR. They both have antivirus capabilities. They could also trigger Fortinet. In this example, though, I've got a FortiGate there. FortiGate detects that we have a laptop that's infected and says, hey, Fortinet, can you quarantine this device? Well, Fortinet can then go out to whatever switch or access point that laptop's connected to. As I mentioned, that we support more than 170 different vendors and 2,800 network devices. Fortinet can quarantine that device, send a splash screen to the device saying, you've been infected, you're quarantined, you need to remediate your device before you're allowed onto the network. At the same time, sending an alert to the NOC team saying, hey, Jim's computer got infected, he's over in this building on this access point, go help him out. So all that happens within seconds so that the virus can be contained before it gets onto the rest of the network. So it's contained in that in device. So that's an example of how Fortinet, while it might not have all the security capabilities that you need to protect your network, it can be part of the solution to take automated action to maintain that zero trust. The next use case I want to talk about is that off-network situation. What do you do when someone is not on the network? How do you maintain control? And for that, we have our agent, our FortiClient fabric agent, that can enforce those zero trust policies of control, managing URL filtering so that employees don't go to websites that they shouldn't go to, where they might get malware, make sure that they keep their devices patched and running, as well as providing that secure remote access with a VPN and supporting, of course, our single sign-on capabilities. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a new capability that we're bringing out, that new user application access that I mentioned. This is called Zero Trust Network Access, and it's actually replacing or will replace over time that VPN connection. So what the Zero Trust Network Access is about is connecting users directly to the applications, no matter where the user is and no matter where the application is. Now, the diagram that I have up here shows that the user can be in a variety of locations. When they go to access an application, they'll be connected to an access proxy, which is going to be something running FortiOS. Now, in being connected, that's going to be an automatic secure tunnel that gets created. So if they're remote, they have a secure tunnel protecting them if they're working from home or the airport or at Starbucks. If they're in the office, they also get a secure encrypted tunnel. And this follows that principle of zero trust. Assume you're breached, you have protection even when you're on the home network. Once they're connected to that access proxy, that proxy does the authentication of the user, confirms the identification of the device the user is using, and the posture of the device to make sure it's in a state acceptable enough to access the applications. It will then make sure that the user has the right to access the application that they're trying to do, and at that point, only after they've passed that test, will the user be connected to the application. And this check happens every time the user goes to access an application. For every single session, that verification is done. So that's that zero trust ongoing verification. And then finally, as I mentioned, the user is connected to the application, no matter if the application's in the data center, a public cloud, or private cloud. The application can be in any of those places. The user doesn't need to know. And importantly, for those that are located in the cloud, those clouds don't need to be exposed to the general internet. They don't need to be exposed for hackers to scan them. They only expect connections from these proxy points, from these devices running FortiOS. So, and I have talked about the access proxy being FortiOS. The reason for that, certainly FortiGates run FortiOS, but that's not the only thing that runs FortiOS. This ZTNA solution can exist on firewalls that are deployed on-premise. It can exist in firewalls that are deployed in the cloud in a virtual VM, or even on our SASE service. So it can be in any of these instances. And those secure tunnels take place because the whole solution is being orchestrated with our FortiClient EMS. It's talking to all those FortiGates, talking to all those FortiClients to make sure that all this happens easily and seamlessly. Some of the advantages of Fortinet's ZTNA solution is that we are leveraging the on-premise firewalls as part of our solution. This not only enables companies to leverage their existing investments, but our firewalls have a variety of capabilities that companies can still take advantage of, such as the SD-WAN capabilities to maintain those connections to the private and public clouds and maybe remote data centers, as well as SD branch capabilities to managing wiring and wireless networks on premise. Also, the traffic is flowing through something running FortiOS, so it is getting the full stack treatment of our award-winning and industry-leading security. And finally, a huge benefit of our solution is the fact that this is not a separate licensed feature. The new ZTNA capability connecting users to applications is simply a feature that's resident within FortiOS and FortiClient. So they do both need to be running our 7.0 firmware, but this is something that someone can turn on when they so desire. So those employees that are running the FortiClient for VPN, they can easily shift over to ZTNA when the company wants to start that migration process. So to recap, the Zero Trust Access solution from Fortinet is about knowing and controlling everyone and everything on the network in order to bring those zero trust principles to onboarding users and devices to your network and to your access applications. Thank you for spending some time with me, and Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. You know, what I'm continually impressed with is how Fortinet continues to obviously move forward. You're not standing still. You've got one of the deepest research teams in the industry to stay on top of these things. As the threat, vector and the whole attack surface evolves, Fortinet continues to evolve, and you can go beyond. I love how you leverage your multiple products and really extend that Fortinet fabric across the entire network infrastructure from endpoint to core, and really beyond into the cloud. So I'm grateful for that. We love it, and I know our customers love it too. So thank you. If you guys are interested in anything that you've heard Peter talk about and want to get contact with your Fortinet rep or a member of the Xilogics team, you can go to xilogics.com and fill out a contact form or shoot a message directly to me at mhand, M-H-A-N-D, at xilogics.com. And Xilogics is X-I-O-L-O-G-I-X. Thank you guys all so much for attending. Thank you again, Peter, for the great information. I wish you all the very best and have a great day.